Podcasting from the Norwood Community Media Studio in Norwood, Massachusetts, this is Impaction with Impact Norwood, a podcast with one goal in mind, to inspire meaningful prevention through action. I'm going to be your host, Aubrey Sejal. So welcome to today's Impaction podcast. With us today, we have Dr. Sejal Prajapati. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you said it wonderfully.
Yes, okay. I was practicing.
Sounds like it.
Dr. Prajapati received a bachelor's degree in psychology and biology from Boston University, a master's degree in in experimental psychology from Seton Hall University, and earned her doctoral degree in clinical school psychology from Kean University.
Clinical and school psychology.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the correction. So clinical and school psychology from Kean University. So you've been quite busy with school for quite a while.
Yeah, it sounds like it based on what you're saying.
Yeah. When did you graduate from Kean University? When did you finish your doctoral program?
2018.
Wow, so very recently.
Yes,
That's awesome. How does it feel to not be a student anymore?
I guess I miss it.
You miss it? Yeah.
I feel like I was a student forever, and I just love being a student.
Yeah.
And then after being a student, I was a mom, so I never got that life of like full-time professional work. I work as a consultant now, and I like that. But I still feel like I'm a student because I'm still like learning how to do all the things I'm doing currently.
Yeah,
so.
Student of life.
Yes.
So just for our listeners, I like to try and start every podcast with a funny story. So on the last podcast with the health director, Sejal, she shared a story of accidentally losing her son, Nathan, but found him. It was all good, but in the process, scratched her car. Oops. Anyway, so that's kind of, the gist. We want to try and do a funny story just to make our guests feel at ease and our listeners kind of crack a smile after what I'm sure are pretty stressful days. So I'm going to just quickly tell our listeners the story about how you and I met, because it's kind of funny. So Sejal and we happen to live in the same apartment complex, and one evening, I think it was late August, early September last year, 2019, I was sitting in my living room. I think it was a Wednesday, I'm not entirely sure, and I smelled barbecue. And I was like, oh, that's right, today is the resident appreciation barbecue. And I was starving. I didn't have anything planned for dinner. I was probably going to order a pizza or something, but then I was like, well, I smell barbecue, I better go out and see what this is all about. And when I was out there, I was in line, adding condiments to my hot dog, I think. And I saw this woman in the most beautiful dress that I had seen in a while. And I think I just said, oh, I love your dress. And your response is what got me. And I was like, I think I'm really going to like this woman. What did you say?
It's my first date dress.
It's her first date dress. And I was like,
Don't
okay.
tell my husband, though.
I know. I was like, oh, boy, what's going on here? But, and why were you wearing your first date dress at a barbecue?
Oh, well, I actually don't remember my mindset of why choosing it. I don't know if I just randomly chose it or if I had that first date mindset.
Yeah.
I guess whenever I go to a new place or a new event, I just like to feel good about myself, and that dress makes me feel good. It's long and flowery, and who doesn't like flowers?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. So that is how Sejal and I met, and then we sat down and we were eating our barbecue together. Although you're a vegetarian, so they had vegetarian burgers for you, I think, right?
Yeah, they initially didn't, and then they got us some, which was nice of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we just got to chatting about what it is that we do, and when Sejal told me about her background and this program that she developed called Commit to You, which she's going to talk about, I was like, oh my goodness, I think it was fate that I smelled barbecue tonight, because I thought she would be a really great asset and someone that I would love to work with as part of the Impact Norwood work, because she's all about empowering people and helping people learn self-compassion. So with that, now that we have the funny story out of the way, I mentioned Commit to You. So I would love for you, Sejal, to tell us what that program is all about. What is Commit to You?
All right, great. So commit to you is my favorite thing to talk about. So I'm excited to talk about it. Commit to you is really just what it says. It's about committing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about first taking a pause and thinking about what is it that's important to me, especially now in COVID when like life is just like uncertain in a way. We don't know anything really,
Mm-hmm.
which is what makes it scary and why self-compassion is really important.
Mm-hmm.
But why that brings me to this part is that in whatever time we have left, it's important to live it the best that we can. So
Mm-hmm.
commit to you starts right there, where it's all about knowing what's important to you and then starting to move towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people out there have like taken the time to really think about what are my values, or what are the ways that I want to live my life. But sometimes that can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So commit to you is all about just every day taking one step at it, one small step every day, because that's what the best we can do, because we have a million things going on.
Right.
And I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried to do something like really important to you. It's really not easy, and it's normal to face challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times, from my experience, from the research I've read, I've noticed that a lot of the times it's human that when we're stressed out, we kind of fight against the system. And a lot of the times, the system around us is just kind of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times when we're going through a challenge, we're not doing the best that we could, we kind of criticize, which is demotivating, and then we kind of lose track. So commit to you is all about supporting yourself to stay on track.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you kind of develop a self-compassionate relationship with yourself, which really entails first really starting to believe and accept that as humans we're flawed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't come knowing everything.
Yep.
So it's a process to learn things, and it's going to take time, and even if we put everything in it, we might fail, we might not do well. So it's about really focusing on just learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to learn, and just accepting that. But just because learning and failing is like normal and human doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Right.
So kind of one of the last parts of self-compassion, this self-compassionate relationship, is starting to really tune into the person who's experiencing this life journey.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when our friends go through things, or our family members or our partners, we're there for them. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, how are you feeling? Like, what can I do to help? But like, I don't act like that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me neither. Towards myself, I don't act like that, but others, I definitely do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know you're a really warm person, so I know you act like that with me. So being self-compassionate is all about, for a lot of people, for the first time in their lives, tuning into like, whoa, there's a person here.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm criticizing this person, what is this person feeling?
Yeah.
So in self-compassion, you kind of change that voice, where you kind of start being there for yourself. Like, a big part of self-compassion is mindfulness. So you kind of tune into like, okay, I'm going through this. What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? How am I acting?
Yeah.
And then once you kind of have a clear picture of what's going on inside and outside, then you kind of try to think about, okay, what is it that this person needs right now as they're going through this challenge? And then how can I give it to that person? And that kind of is life-changing when you're able to get to that place. And it's so motivating.
Yeah. It takes work, though. I mean, it's definitely hard. And if you don't mind me interrupting you, because there was one thing that you did at the beginning of the Commit to You program that I was just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It's simple, but it makes so much sense. So you had us think of an experience or a time. Can you remind me what that exercise was? I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
So just for the listeners, we were in a group setting.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I had asked everyone to kind of think about a challenging experience they've had recently, and to kind of think about, like, how did you react? How did you feel? How did you talk to yourself? How did you relate to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a lot of the times people remember, because like we relate to ourselves in like a very similar way in different, even though experiences can be different.
Yeah.
And then I asked you guys to just, turn to the person next to you. I probably chose right or left, one of them. And just to talk to that person like you would talk to yourself.
Yeah.
And most people react in general like, no, I don't want to get punched in the face right now. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, because we tend to be really critical on ourselves. Like, I remember when I did that exercise, I was thinking really negative thoughts about myself and like beating myself up for not handling something the best way, or yeah, and then the moment you had us, turn to our neighbor and say what we were saying to them, saying to ourselves to them, I was blown away. I was like, holy moly, I would never talk to someone like this. So that's really interesting. And you asked the question, why is that okay to do to ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really like kind of an aha moment for me. And something, even just that small thing, it makes me more mindful of when I'm talking to myself, if that makes sense. So in some of the other work that I've been around you doing, you did a webinar for us in like the height of the pandemic, which was great. And you also did a program here at the Norwood High School with some of our students, and you talked about inner experiences. And I was wondering if you could kind of, I don't know about other people, but lately I've been overthinking and worrying a lot more than normal, right?
All humans.
Go figure, there's a pandemic and I'm worrying more. But I was wondering if you have any tips on how folks can deal with all of the what ifs to kind of calm the really loud kind of commotion that I feel like is happening in not just my brain, but probably many others.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. And I love your use of the word loud, because that's exactly what it is.
That's like, what it feels like, yeah.
And the best and the worst thing about the brain is that it is this powerful, loud thing, and it can, when our brains and our bodies were initially made, what was in front of us was like the loudest things, but now our brains are so developed that anything that happens here feels like it's real, and we react to it like it's real if we're not dealing with it in the right way. So this is totally happening during the pandemic. So I think one of the most important things to do is first just acknowledge that it's okay that we're worrying, because a lot of the times we're experiencing something and then we are angry at ourselves for feeling this way, and it just makes things worse. Like, we're going through a pandemic and there are so many worries, because we don't know. Today everything could be fine, tomorrow everything might not be. So first, just validating that behavior, that my mind is worrying, and it makes sense, right? Because a lot of the times that just feels better, just realizing that it's okay to be this way and that it's not my fault. And then the other thing that's really important is the mind is only as powerful as we let it be. And the mind can really trap us when we're just in our thoughts and we're just like ruminating or worrying, and it just goes from one thought to the other, and you're just trapped. So one of the most important things is to just using mindfulness to start becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions. And then once we start becoming aware that, okay, I'm worrying again, just labeling that experience. Okay, I'm worrying. And then, okay, I'm going to take a breath right now, and I'm going to come back to the present moment and not in my head. Again, appreciating the mind that it's doing the best it can. It doesn't like this uncertainty, because that part does suck, but it's not really going to help me. Right. So let me ground to the present moment. And then, changing the conversation a little bit, right? I mean, the uncertainty is going to be there whether we're sitting there worrying or we're sitting there doing something else. So accepting that this uncertainty is going to be there, but now I'm going to intentionally do something. Maybe I can intentionally, use self-compassion and figure out, okay, what is it that I'm feeling, and what is it that I need right now? Or maybe intentionally doing something that matters, right? Because then that gives you control. You don't have control about the what ifs, but you have control with what you're doing. So, and the reason the last two of either doing something compassionate towards yourself or doing something that matters, that kind of changes the focus. A lot of the times when we're worrying, we just sit there and worry all day, and that's the only stimuli that we're experiencing. So just taking control and changing the stimuli and including more. So I think those are some really helpful things that might help. That helps me a lot, and that's what research has found to be helpful.
Awesome. So I have a question, and it's not in the list of questions that I've sent you, so I'm sorry if I'm throwing you off.
I can't do it.
No, so, we're talking a lot about self-compassion, and I feel like sometimes self-compassion can get confused with being selfish.
Okay, yes.
How is self-compassion different from being selfish? So you're talking about, taking a step back and asking yourself what you need in that moment. Like, sometimes I'm like, well, I need a massage. Like, that would be really nice, and that might be viewed as being selfish.
Yes.
So how do you differentiate between selfishness and self-compassion?
That's such a great question, especially I'm sure a lot of the listeners probably think that I kind of get that question all the time, or like I just hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
So being selfish would mean that you're doing something that's hurting other people. So to me, when you're being self-compassionate, you're actually taking care of yourself, and it's when you're taken care of that you can be the best for anyone else around you. And I think that one of the reasons why people think it can be selfish is because in our culture, in our lives, we don't normally think about this person there. We're taught to think about our friends or family or whoever, but we aren't really taught to think about ourselves. So that's why I think a lot of the times people misunderstand. And I think one related thing to this is like sometimes people don't want to be self-compassionate because they think that it's gonna demotivate them. That I'm just giving myself an excuse.
Oh, that's interesting.
But the truth is that if you're just kind to yourself, then you're actually gonna be more motivated. So it's actually not a negative thing. It's actually the best thing for yourself.
It's more motivating than being negative to yourself.
Yes. Yeah. All the research, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen research that's ever found being critical to be helpful on average. But all the research has found the more compassionate you are, the more motivated you are, the more you're willing to learn, the more you're willing to try. Because if you just think about, like, say you're playing football and then you have a coach who's just yelling at you, telling you how much you can't play this game, how you always do everything wrong. Like, are you really going to want to try? Because even if you try, you do it wrong, you're going to have someone yelling at you. On the other hand, if you have someone who's like, you're doing a great job, then you might be willing to try, because even if you don't get to where you want to be, it's okay, because you're not going to have someone yelling at you. You'll have someone understanding that you're learning and just keep trying.
And uplifting you.
Exactly.
And providing, not criticism, but guidance and helping you learn from your mistakes, which I think is great. If you're just yelling at someone, they're not going to learn and get better. So
Yeah, and I love how you brought in the word learn into the focus, because like in most of like self-compassion work, the conversation is usually limited to just taking care of yourself, but in Commit to You, it's taking care of yourself while you're focusing on getting to where you want to go, while you're focusing on learning and getting better. So self-compassion is not selfish, or it's not giving yourself an excuse at all. It's really just taking care of yourself while you're making all these life moves.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Thank you for differentiating between the two, because I think that's a huge barrier into people like starting to go down the path of being more compassionate towards themselves, because it's, like you said, in our culture, it's almost seen as, maybe kind of a weakness, I think, but I don't think that's the case at all. No. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So also in your program, you talk about meditation and what a great tool that can be. And initially when I think of the word meditation, I think of it in the traditional sense. You sit in a quiet room, legs crossed, palms up, your pointer finger or middle finger, ring finger and thumb together, a finger and your thumb together.
And it has to be exactly that one.
And it has to, right.
Can't move, so, has to stay there.
Exactly. So I think that's the image that a lot of people conjure when they hear the word meditation, and they're like, oh, I don't have time for that. Who has time to sit and make their mind, silent by meditating? So I was wondering if you could talk about some ways that people can integrate meditation into their day-to-day routine, because it's actually easier than you would think, and there are so many benefits to that. So I guess that's kind of a two-part question. What the benefits of meditation can be, and how people can integrate it into their day-to-day routine.
Okay, cool. So let's start with the benefits. Which one would you want me to start with?
You can start with whatever one you want. Okay. This is my show.
Okay, it's your show, so we're going to start with integration first, because that's really fresh in my mind, because that's how you started the question.
Yeah.
So you're totally right that that's what people think, and that like kind of stops people from like trying, because like who has that extra time, and who has like the ability to quiet the mind, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Meditation is not at all about quieting the mind, so to speak. I know that's what that's what everyone thinks it is. To be honest, to me, meditation only means that you're making an intentional choice to focus on something that's through the senses, whether it's something you see, hear, touch, whatever it might be. And then all that meditation is that, you know, you're choosing to focus, and then whenever your mind wanders, and trust me it will, because that's what the mind does, you just compassionately bring your attention back, like, oh, my mind wandered, let me just bring it back. And that's all the meditation is. And sometimes we'll have one of those sessions that, you know, you will be kind of not having that many thoughts, and sometimes you'll have to bring yourself back a million times. It's still meditation, however many times you have to return to your anchor. And it's much easier to integrate than most people think. Like, for example, you can do everyday activities. Like, even when you're washing dishes, just be mindful of what you're doing. Be mindful of how your hands feel, you know, with the soap or with the water or touching the dishes. As long as you're just sensing what it is. One of the things I love to do is I love to, like, listen to music. So say I'm driving, I can listen to music and I can just focus on all the different tones or the different words.
But not to the point where you forget that you're on the road, right? You're still safe about driving.
Well, I'll leave it up to you guys. No, I'm just joking. Of course, doing it safely. And one of the other ones I really like to do, and I think I've shared this with you before, is, like, I really like showers because you know, I like the warm water. So just paying attention to how the warm water feels on all the different parts of your body. Like, it's as simple as that. And you know, one thing they do want to add is that it could be fun. Like, maybe there are some psychologists out there who are so, like, who might tell you it can't be fun. But to me, I think it could be fun. If you like to dance mindfully. If you like to sing mindfully. Like, do whatever it takes for you to just be committed to it. Because it doesn't really matter to me personally, you know, how cool your practice looks and how zen you look versus are you committed to it? Are you doing it? Because I think as long as you have some form of commitment where you're doing it every day or every week or whatever you can feasibly do, that's what's going to build the mindfulness skills. And that's where all the benefits are, is just developing these mindfulness skills, which leads me to your other question about
the benefits.
What are the benefits? So there's a lot of benefits. One thing is just like an awareness of, like, your internal experience that you had mentioned in the last question. When you're practicing mindfulness, and you're kind of really aware, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And that's really powerful. A lot of the times, if you're not practicing mindfulness or meditation, have you ever seen someone who's just, like, seems like out of control?
Yes.
A lot of the times, if we're feeling really strong emotions, that's what it kind of feels like. So what mindfulness does, and when in terms of using meditation or mindfulness with emotions, all it means is that you take a step back and then you kind of label, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, and then trying to label, okay, what physical sensations are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling a tension in my head. What thoughts are accompanied by these emotions? Oh, I'm noticing a thought that, you know, I'm not the best podcast speaker. So just
you're doing great.
So just taking a step back and, like, kind of almost being aware and observing these things is a coping skill. It kind of makes it less overwhelming. It's a good example, like, that it can give is, like, imagine you're at the beach and it's, like, a really, like, there's, like, a lot of big waves. Imagine you're actually in the water when there's a big wave. Like, imagine how that would feel differently from being on the sand and watching the wave. Like, that's two different experiences for most people. And to me, that's what mindfulness is. It gives you the ability to kind of be calmer because you're a little bit, you know, kind distanced.
Removed.
Exactly. So that's one of the main benefits. And then I think it also kind of gives you a better understanding of yourself. Like, me and you can both go through the same situation, the same person, the same context. Everything is the same, but we will most likely have a different reaction.
Right.
Because as people, we're not just objective perceptors, right? We don't just see things as they really are. We see things based on our thoughts and our emotions. And oftentimes when we're very mindless, we confuse our perception based on our own thoughts and beliefs and stories as being reality. And that gets us into a lot of problems.
That's so interesting.
People,
yeah.
in situations, work, relationships, like it can be really problematic.
Yeah.
So like the most kind of painful and part of mindfulness and best part of mindfulness is that you really start to understand like what you're experiencing. And the reason I'm saying painful is whenever I think you start really tuning into your experience at a deeper level, like I'm feeling whenever I see a person, they don't look at me, I feel really sad, like I'm a loser. Like realizing those type of thoughts, you naturally start to have compassion for yourself because you finally start seeing like, wow, like even though on the surface I'm always angry at myself for being angry at small things, well, the reason you're getting angry is because it's touching your vulnerability, and it's hard for you if people don't acknowledge you because your mind is jumping to conclusions based on your own belief that, you know, you're a loser, that's what other people think, when other people just are worrying about themselves. You know, they might not be ignoring you. So
that's really
having that awareness of what's happening within yourself really helps you better understand life situations and, you know, create less problems for yourself. So I think that's some of the benefits of mindfulness. And then
I think, go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
there are
definitely.
so many benefits to it. But
And
you were going to add one
just
more,
one
right?
more.
Yeah, go for
like
it.
even me, it was funny. I was thinking about meditation while I was walking to my car, and then I saw like all these different colors trees, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. And then that's what mindfulness gives you when you're like not so caught up in your head and you're like distancing yourself. It opens you up to all the beauty and richness of life.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest gifts as well, just being able to enjoy life.
Yeah. And I think that is especially important right now because there is so much negative right now. So I think being able to have your mind clear to notice the really beautiful things that are still around us is extremely important for our mental health and our overall well-being. So if you're going to start meditation, now is probably one of the best times to start.
And before we move on, you actually hit something that I forgot to mention about Commit to You. One part of Commit to You that I've forgotten, because that, you know how I talked about, like, you figure out what's important to you, and then every day you do something small to move towards it. It's not just about, like, crossing off that list, but it's how you do it also matters.
Yeah. All right. What's next? They're going to edit that part out. Just taking a breather. I'm noticing that my ears are starting to hurt from the headphones. I don't know if I think I was in that chair earlier, and I think these are tighter than those were. Or I'm just like at the end of the day and I'm just tired. So moving on. So actually I think we're kind of nearing the end.
Yes.
Is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't that you would like to share?
I think you asked all the questions, but I think one thing I do want to share is like my overall message, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess my overall message is just be kind to yourself. Like, you know, we all want the best things for ourselves, and that's why we're critical of ourselves. Like, everything we do is so natural and normal.
Yeah.
But, like, just take a second to realize that, you know, there's a person there with you at all times, and that person hurts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Especially when we talk to that person in this way. And COVID-19 is so hard and there's so much social isolation that we need ourselves more than ever. And like, life is short if this is teaching us anything. So why not just support yourself? Like, you know, because of society and how it is, we're so programmed to think we're not good enough, but you are. No matter what, you're good enough. And please never tell yourself that you're not good enough, and just enjoy your life.
Yeah.
That's all Commit to You is about. Enjoy your life. Like, we all have stories, we all have problems, but in the end of the day, all we have is the moment, and
ourselves.
Exactly, and ourselves.
Yep.
So just be kind and enjoy the moment, because you deserve that no matter what. There's no person out there who doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
So,
you kind of stole my thunder, because my last question that I ask, I'm going to be, trying to ask every podcast guest is, what piece of advice do you have for Norwood residents as it relates to self-compassion? And you got me, so I couldn't even ask. But
I'm that
you.
good.
Yes, you are. Well, you read my mind. So
you actually
you were
ask each person about self-compassion?
No, so I ask whatever their area of expertise is, but it's always what advice do you have for Norwood residents? So earlier I asked Sejal, what her advice to residents is around public health.
Oh, okay.
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
I was like, wow, you're dedicated to self-compassion. That's amazing.
It is really important. So there's so much more that I could be talking to you about because your program is really amazing, and it's not just a 20-minute, 25-minute podcast. So we'll definitely have you back on the show. So in the meantime, if there are any questions that you have for Sejal, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, you can feel free to visit the Impact Norwood website, impactnorwood.org. There is a form there under our podcast tab, and you could submit questions, or if there's a topic you'd like Sejal to talk about as it pertains to self-compassion, please feel free to do that. And next time we have her on, we can have her go over those questions. So.
And I also have a website.
Oh, yes. That was you got me. See? Man, I was going to also ask, where can people go if they want more information about Commit to You? Yes. So where can they go?
Oddly enough, you can go to committou.org.
Oh, my goodness. And now, is that Commit TOU or the number 2?
TO.
Okay.
So COMMITTOYOU.org. I had to read it to make sure I was saying it right, because there's a lot of T's and a lot of O's and everything.
So that's committou.org, and we can definitely put that information up on our website.
Awesome.
Yeah, the link to your site with all your amazing Commit to You videos that were adapted for COVID-19. So
my entire COVID program is on there.
Yeah, a lot of really useful stuff there. So thank you all for tuning in for this week's episode. Join us again in 2 weeks. That was Impaction for this week. Join us again in 2 weeks. Huge thank you to Norwood Community Media for allowing us to use their space and their incredible equipment to record this podcast.